under the soft glow of crystal chandeliers suspended in the elegant ambience of the Elmwood restaurant. An unexpected and tense moment shattered the peaceful atmosphere, casting a heavy silence over the room. Ethan Grant, the sharply dressed restaurant manager, stood imposingly before Naomi Clark, a poised black woman in her early 30s, whose confident demeanor was now shadowed by a trace of confusion. Clutching a leather briefcase tightly against the reception counter, once a symbol of warm welcomes, she found herself at the center of an unspoken confrontation. Amid hushed whispers and the curious stares of more than 30 diners, Ethan spoke with a firm yet cold tone. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but our restaurant has strict policies regarding dress code and guest standards. I must ask you to leave so as not to disturb our other patrons." His words cut through the room like a blade through silk, turning an air of sophistication into one of tension and discomfort. Naomi gripped her bag strap more tightly, unable to comprehend how her professional appearance and composed demeanor could be perceived through such a lens of prejudice and disdain. Though she tried to explain, Ethan remained unyielding and curt. "No exceptions. Security will escort you out if necessary." A soft rustle from behind broke the silence. Maria Lopez, a young receptionist, shifted nervously at her desk, sensing the injustice unfolding before her, but too afraid to speak against her superior. The room felt frozen, every eye fixed on the confrontation. No one dared to interrupt. Naomi's gaze swept across the dining room, pausing on the tables, the chairs she had chosen, and the walls she had poured her heart into creating. A silent but powerful decision formed within her. She could not allow prejudice to diminish her worth. What would you do if you were cast out of the very place you had built from the ground up? Ethan had no idea that just hours earlier, Naomi Clark, the CEO and rightful owner of the Elmwood, had walked through those doors filled with pride and hope. Now he had unknowingly disrespected the very woman who held the sole and true authority of this establishment. Naomi Clark was not someone who frequently appeared at the Elmwood, the fine dining restaurant chain she had meticulously built over the past 4 years. The sleek black sedan, parked quietly outside, bore no blaring horns or flashy security detail, only a woman in a charcoal suit holding a leather briefcase, standing silently as she observed the interior through the large glass windows of the first floor. The Elmwood, nestled in the heart of bustling downtown Boston, stood as a symbol of refined integration between high-end cuisine and deep respect for cultural diversity. Naomi had invested over $2.8 million into it, and every brick, every piece of furniture, and each beam of light carried her hopes for a space where anyone, regardless of who they were, could feel valued and dignified. But tonight, something felt different. Most of the guests were white businessmen in neatly tailored suits, couples celebrating special occasions, and formal business meetings conducted over expensive wine. The atmosphere felt more suffocating than usual, and when Ethan Grant stepped out from inside the restaurant, he couldn't take his eyes off Naomi, as if some unspoken instinct was warning him that she did not resemble the typical clientele. Ethan, a restaurant manager brought in from a series of upscale establishments in northern Boston, had more than a decade of experience, but was also someone accustomed to maintaining standards reserved for the elite, where difference was something to be excluded. To Ethan, Naomi's presence was not only unexpected, It was an unacceptable challenge. As Naomi stepped through the thick glass doors, the soft smile on her lips did little to hide the firmness and resolve in her eyes. She moved toward the reception desk, where Maria Lopez, the young receptionist who always tried to do her job well, but often found herself stifled under Ethan's authority, greeted her with a nervous glance. Naomi's presence seemed to shift the entire atmosphere, stretching the silence into a taut tension as Ethan immediately appeared, placing himself in her path with a voice firm but laced with prejudice. The scene unfolded like a scripted performance, where power and bias painted an unspoken portrait of exclusion, where the gatekeeper refused to acknowledge the presence of a black woman in a space she had created with her own hands. The confrontation between Naomi Clark and Ethan Grant unfolded right in front of the reception desk, where every curious and slightly skeptical gaze from both customers and restaurant staff converged. Ethan, with eyes clouded by prejudice, could not hide his suspicion as he asked about Naomi's reservation, a seemingly routine question, yet laden with implication that she didn't belong to the class of clientele he was used to serving. Naomi responded simply but firmly that she was there to inspect the restaurant's operations, something entirely expected given her role as the owner. Instead of acknowledging that, Ethan responded with thinly veiled disdain, suggesting she was unworthy and did not belong in the space he referred to as exclusive. Maria, the young receptionist standing nearby, looked on with worried and hesitant eyes. She could feel the injustice unfolding before her, but fear of losing her job and facing reprimand from her superior kept her silent. Ethan's coldness and firm stance built an invisible wall that blocked Naomi from accessing the very place she had worked so hard to create. Racist undertones didn't need to be spoken aloud. They were evident in Ethan's gaze, his tone, and his manner. The woman standing before them, the true owner of the Elmwood, was treated as an outsider, cast to the margins as if she were an intruder. In that moment, surrounded by clinking wine glasses and hushed murmurs from upscale diners, the elegant setting turned suffocating and more painful than ever. Still, Naomi remained composed, refusing to meet Ethan's disdain with anger. Her sharp gaze and calm demeanor revealed the resilience of someone long familiar with adversity. But inside, a fire of resolve burned brighter than ever, igniting the realization that this was not merely a personal dispute. It was a symbol of the deeper battle against prejudice and injustice that persisted within the world of high-end service. When Ethan Grant firmly demanded that Naomi leave the Elmwood, showing no hint of compromise or empathy, the atmosphere in the dining room grew heavier than ever. His request wasn't merely a cold directive, but carried an unspoken rejection, subtly pushing Naomi out of a space to which she rightfully belonged. She stood silently, her eyes sweeping across every table, every chair, once symbols of her dream and dedication, now transformed into alien objects denying her presence. In that moment, a wave of humiliation surged through her like a violent storm, creeping deep into the core of her being. But beneath the pain, there was an unshakable resolve, a defiance unwilling to yield to injustice. Naomi left the restaurant without a word, stepping out into the night filled with both rage and determination. Inside the taxi weaving through the bustling streets of Boston, she called Janet Miller, head of legal at Williams Hospitality Group, requesting immediate assistance. This was followed by a series of calls to Michael Lee, the head of HR, David Chang, co-founder and strategic partner, and Sarah Kim, head of communications, each entrusted with executing a legal and media response plan to manage the crisis without delay. On her phone screen, Naomi watched surveillance footage capturing every detail. The discriminatory attitude of Ethan, his dismissive gestures, and the hesitant silence of other staff. These would become undeniable evidence in a battle against deeply rooted prejudice. Amid the chill of a Boston winter night, Naomi's mind had no space left for fear or hesitation, only a burning fire of justice and transformation. The moment Naomi Clark ended her final call, a clear and calculated plan began to take shape in her mind and within her team. Janet Miller, the seasoned head of legal with over 20 years of experience handling discrimination cases, immediately prepared the full dossier to file charges against Ethan Grant for serious violations of professional ethics and company policy. Simultaneously, Michael Lee, the dynamic and forward-thinking head of HR, was tasked with initiating the emergency termination protocol while preparing mandatory training programs to rebuild a work culture grounded in fairness and positivity. David Chang, co-founder of Williams Hospitality Group, was alerted for an emergency crisis management meeting and to ensure that all financial and communication resources were on standby. Sarah Kim, head of communications, swiftly designed a press release plan and launched a social media strategy aimed at demonstrating transparency and a firm commitment to eradicating all forms of discrimination at the Elmwood. Every detail was tightly coordinated, from reviewing the complete surveillance footage to recording statements from key witnesses such as Maria Lopez and Carlos Reyes, who had seen the injustice but hesitated to speak out against Ethan's actions. Each small detail was meticulously documented, forming a comprehensive picture of a deeply embedded bias within an environment once seen as refined and progressive. Meanwhile, Ethan remained unaware that his arrogance and prejudice were steering his career toward a dangerous edge. Updates from the communications team reported that the surveillance video had begun to circulate widely on social media, drawing increasing attention from the public. The pressure was mounting rapidly. Naomi was not only preparing for a legal battle, but for a cultural revolution that was about to unfold at the Elmwood. While Naomi and her team moved swiftly in preparation, Ethan Grant remained relaxed in the Elmwood's management office, sipping his glass of whiskey as if the entire incident were nothing more than a passing breeze. He took pride in how he had handled the situation, firmly believing that removing an unfit guest was necessary to maintain the restaurant's luxurious and elite image. However, deep down, the doubtful glances from Maria Lopez and Carlos Reyes lingered in his mind, stirring an unusual sense of discomfort. Neither of the two staff members could forget the way Ethan treated Naomi. The coldness, the harshness, and the words steeped in deep-seated prejudice. A few patrons quietly pulled out their phones and captured the moment, and the footage quickly spread across social media at lightning speed. The video showing Ethan forcing Naomi to leave the restaurant sparked outrage online, drawing fierce condemnation from the public and catching the attention of social advocacy groups, culinary experts, and anti-discrimination activists. A wave of angry comments and boycott calls flooded social platforms, creating the strongest backlash the Elmwood had ever faced. Ethan began to feel the mounting pressure as his name and the story of his discriminatory behavior became trending topics across every digital space. Sitting in silence, staring at his phone screen with growing concern, he realized for the first time that the power he once believed to be unshakable might collapse in just a matter of minutes. The video capturing the incident at the Elmwood was far from a minor mishap in a restaurant, quickly becoming a viral phenomenon on social media with hundreds of thousands of views and shares within just a few hours. The hashtag #ElmwoodDiscrimination spread rapidly throughout the culinary community, drawing attention from prominent public figures, social organizations, and respected journalists. In-depth articles and commentary about discrimination in high-end service industries began to flood major news outlets, while online communities voiced overwhelming support and solidarity with Naomi Clark. The culinary world swiftly responded, with events and award shows temporarily suspending partnerships with the Elmwood, applying immense pressure on the restaurant to make a meaningful change. Meanwhile, Naomi and her team were not only preparing for a direct confrontation with Ethan Grant, but also developing a clear media strategy, leveraging the power of social platforms to ensure transparency and reclaim justice for their brand. They understood that victory would not simply be about removing one outdated individual, but about transforming an entrenched culture of discrimination that had seeped into every corner of the service industry. With unwavering determination, Naomi stepped back into the Elmwood, bolstered by the powerful support of a wider community, ready to show everyone where true authority lies and what the values of inclusion and respect in business truly mean. The following morning, at exactly 10 a.m., Naomi Clark entered the Elmwood, not as the quiet woman turned away the day before, but flanked by a formidable legal and HR team, ready to rewrite the fate of the establishment. Ethan Grant, still carrying his usual air of confidence, did not immediately recognize the woman standing before him as the true owner of the restaurant, the one he had publicly and disrespectfully dismissed. The dining room atmosphere thickened instantly as every eye turned toward the pair, with both staff and patrons sensing the undeniable shift in power unfolding before them. Janet Miller, a seasoned attorney with sharp eyes, stepped forward, her voice firm yet refined. "Mr. Ethan Grant, we need to discuss your employment status." A flicker of confusion crept across Ethan's face, his lack of preparation exposed as he attempted to defend himself, citing managerial authority entrusted to him by absentee owners overseas. But Naomi, in a voice calm yet commanding, interrupted, "You report to me, and you no longer work here." Staff members who had witnessed the events of the previous evening began to gather, their expressions a mix of surprise and quiet relief. Maria Lopez, who had hesitated to speak up before, now stood upright, her gaze filled with pride as she witnessed the restoration of rightful leadership. Carlos Reyes, a longtime server, stepped forward to Naomi with an earnest apology on his lips. Stories once silenced, emotions long suppressed, now rose to the surface, creating a powerful sense of collective resolve against injustice. Ethan stood frozen, as though each layer of his false authority was being stripped away, realizing that his illusion of power had been shattered. When attorney Janet handed him the termination notice, citing severe violations of anti-discrimination policy, he was left speechless. Naomi addressed those gathered, declaring that the Elmwood was not merely a place of fine cuisine, but a symbol of dignity and inclusion where every guest deserved to be treated fairly, regardless of background or skin color. She emphasized that this moment marked the first step in rebuilding the restaurant's integrity and reputation. A cultural revolution had begun right at the site of a painful incident, and this day would serve as a powerful lesson, not only for Ethan, but for the entire high-end service industry in Boston and across America. After Ethan Grant was officially terminated, Naomi Clark stood before the staff and patrons of the Elmwood, asserting her authority and vision with clarity and conviction. She was not just the owner, but the architect of a new culture where every individual would be treated with dignity and served with fairness. Naomi shared that the Williams Hospitality Group, of which the Elmwood was the crown jewel, operated 12 restaurants across Boston and surrounding areas, generating over $50 million in annual revenue. Her mission had always been simple yet profound: to create a fine dining environment defined not by exclusion, but by diversity and inclusion. Staff members who had once endured prejudice and oppression now stepped forward, apologized to Naomi, and pledged to join her in reshaping the restaurant's culture. Maria Lopez, the young receptionist, spoke with emotion, saying she felt lucky to work in a place where human values were truly upheld. Carlos Reyes, a long-time waiter, also expressed his remorse for not defending Naomi when he had the chance. Naomi responded with forgiveness and a promise to foster an environment where everyone's voice would be encouraged and respected. She emphasized that the Elmwood would no longer tolerate any customer or employee who carried discriminatory beliefs. As her words echoed through the room, Ethan stood near the entrance, feeling the full weight of isolation and defeat. Staff members who had remained silent before now looked at him with firm, unwavering eyes. Security gently but firmly escorted Ethan out of the space, marking the end of a dark chapter for the restaurant. Naomi closed the gathering by reminding everyone that true change does not come from removing a single person, but begins with the commitment to build a system rooted in fairness and progress. The story of the Elmwood was no longer just about a restaurant, but had become a symbol of justice prevailing and the enduring power of resilience in the fight against deeply rooted bias. The consequences of Ethan Grant's discriminatory actions extended far beyond the loss of his job and personal failure. The story of the Elmwood quickly became a symbol of the serious repercussions that prejudice can bring in the modern business environment. Major newspapers in Boston and neighboring cities continuously published articles and interviews analyzing the incident, while praising Naomi Clark's strong and decisive response in defending the dignity and rights of both herself and her team. Social organizations and anti-discrimination community networks swiftly mobilized, using the case as a focal point for awareness campaigns and to push for equitable policies across the service industry. On a legal level, Naomi and her legal team filed a lawsuit against Ethan for violating human rights and anti-discrimination workplace policies, leading to him facing serious penalties. Simultaneously, Williams Hospitality Group partnered with professional training organizations to implement mandatory diversity and inclusion programs, aiming to elevate awareness and drive deep cultural change across their entire system. Ethan Grant was compelled to attend these mandatory trainings while also receiving administrative penalties and court-imposed sanctions from the labor tribunal. His personal reputation and professional credibility collapsed entirely, making it nearly impossible for him to secure employment again in the restaurant industry. This incident served not only as a wake-up call for Ethan, but also as a stern warning to the entire service sector in Boston and nationwide. Discrimination is not just unethical, it carries profound legal and economic consequences. Through her determination and courage, Naomi Clark opened a new chapter not only for the Elmwood, but for the entire culinary industry as it moves toward embracing fairness and inclusivity. The incident at the Elmwood sparked a profound wave of transformation that extended far beyond the restaurant itself, influencing the entire service and hospitality industry in Boston. Major industry corporations such as McDonald's Boston, regional Starbucks branches, and many upscale restaurant chains swiftly introduced mandatory diversity and inclusion training programs for all managers and staff. Numerous universities and vocational institutions in culinary arts and hospitality management quickly updated their curricula, adding courses on anti-discrimination awareness, multicultural understanding, and strategies for building equitable work environments. Economic studies conducted by reputable universities in Boston revealed that businesses implementing diversity and inclusion policies tend to achieve superior performance, with notable increases in customer satisfaction and loyalty. The successful model of Williams Hospitality Group was adopted and replicated by many other companies, establishing a new standard across the industry. The Massachusetts state government responded by issuing new regulations aimed at reinforcing anti-discrimination efforts in service businesses, imposing strict penalties on violators. The influence of Naomi Clark's story and the Elmwood extended beyond national borders, drawing attention from restaurant and hospitality associations worldwide, who began applying similar standards. International culinary and tourism organizations started to make diversity and inclusion key criteria in awards and certifications. This cultural shift within the service sector marked a major turning point, not only reshaping managerial attitudes, but also elevating societal awareness of the value of fairness and respect for every individual, regardless of race or background. 2 years after that fateful night at the Elmwood, the restaurant had not only recovered, but risen to become a shining symbol of inclusion and exceptional service. When Naomi Clark stepped through the doors, she was warmly greeted by Marcus Rodriguez, a former scholarship student from the Williams Hospitality Group's diversity program, now proudly serving as the head of reception. Inside, the air was filled with cheerful conversations in multiple languages, with couples, business professionals, and guests of all backgrounds enjoying their meals without fear of discrimination. Maria Lopez, now promoted to assistant manager after completing her hospitality leadership training at Cornell, shook Naomi's hand with heartfelt gratitude for believing in her and transforming the lives of the staff. Carlos Reyes, once silent in the face of injustice, now led the wine selection department, thriving in his passion and respected for his expertise thanks to Naomi's support. Jennifer, the lead server, moved confidently through the dining room, proud to represent a business where inclusion was not just policy, but a cornerstone of success. David Chang handed Naomi the latest reservation report, revealing a waitlist of over 1,200 guests, a clear testament to the powerful draw of the Elmwood's inclusive model. At table 12, the same spot where the now viral video had been filmed, a young black girl joyfully celebrated her birthday, ordering her favorite dishes without the slightest worry of being judged or denied. A notification from the court confirmed that Ethan Grant had completed his community service and mandatory awareness training. prompting a quiet smile from Naomi, knowing that real change was underway. This story was no longer just about a business success or a legal victory, but about leaving behind a legacy where the next generation learned that human dignity and respect are never negotiable. As night fell, Naomi stood in the center of a dining room once scarred by injustice, now alive with trust, compassion, and excellence intertwined. And she understood that the greatest victory was not personal revenge, but the transformation of a broken system into a future where everyone belongs. The story of Naomi Clark and the Elmwood did not end with the transformation of a restaurant or a single industry, but rather opened a new chapter for society as a whole, where power is understood in a deeper and more human way. Power is not merely about ownership or control, but about the ability to bring justice, uphold ethical values, and inspire lasting change. Naomi did not just fire a prejudiced manager. She dismantled an underlying system of discrimination and replaced it with a corporate culture grounded in respect and inclusivity. Her journey stands as proof of the strength of a visionary and persistent individual, a source of inspiration for other leaders around the world who are striving to create fairer workplaces and business environments. Naomi's message did not stop within the walls of the Elmwood, but echoed throughout the business community, the service industry, hospitality, retail, and many other sectors still grappling with issues of bias and discrimination. She challenged everyone with a simple yet profound question. Do we serve some people, or do we serve everyone? And that question has become a guiding light for many systemic reforms across various fields. Her story also serves as a reminder to each of us about our role in standing up against injustice, whether through our voice or our actions, to help build a society where human dignity is never compromised for any reason. Naomi Clark proved that change begins with courage, with refusing to accept what is wrong, and with a commitment to making this world better for the generations to come. The story of Naomi Clark and the Elmwood did not conclude with a personal event, but with an open invitation extended to all of society. When the laughter of a young girl echoed from table 12, where a little black girl confidently ordered her meal just the way she liked it, it became a symbol of a future free from discrimination, a place where human dignity is fully protected and deeply respected. The transformation at the Elmwood ignited a flame of hope for millions, inspiring them not just to endure, but to rise, resist, and demand justice. This story is also a powerful reminder that power, when stripped of values and responsibility, becomes meaningless, but when guided by the right purpose, it can spark a revolution, changing an entire industry and reaching into every corner of life. Naomi is not only the victor in the battle against prejudice at the Elmwood, she has become a symbol of perseverance, courage, and compassion. Her story will continue to inspire, to awaken awareness and action in every individual and organization committed to building a world where discrimination has no place, and in its stead thrive empathy, inclusion, and sustainable progress. In that spirit, Naomi Clark and the Elmwood have not only etched their mark in the history of the culinary world, but also in the hearts of those who long for justice and transformation. This story opens a new journey, a promise for the changes still ahead, where fairness is no longer a distant ideal, but a vivid and living reality of the future. The story of Naomi Clark and the Elmwood shows us clearly that true change does not come solely from the bold actions of one individual, but also from a leadership vision grounded in responsibility and a deep desire to build an environment that values fairness and respects human dignity. This stands as a powerful lesson for any business or organization striving for sustainable growth in today's society. Success should not be measured by profit alone, but also by the ability to create positive change for the community. If this story has inspired you, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel to continue joining us on journeys that explore power, justice, and profound transformation. And be sure to leave a comment with the words "Equality Matters" to help spread this meaningful message to others. Thank you for watching and sharing this story.